Hey guys, Scott here, and I was working on my Blight guide. I was chasing Jen around a bunch of different structures to try to explain how to use his power and all that good stuff. And we came across something that I had to just make a video about because this is something I've talked about a lot. It's something I definitely feel is one of the weakest parts about the game, despite it being a central identity to the game. But I think we got to talk about map RNG. I think map RNG is the core of so many issues because the problem with balancing this game is we don't know what to balance it around. And that's, not even paying attention to like the whole thing with, good players or bad players or the top players. Who do we balance around? The problem is we don't even have a consistent testing arena in which to gauge balancing things off of. For example, you can have a scenario in this game, a very realistic scenario, where you have a perfect killer player going against 4 perfect survivor players. No players change out during these matches. They play on Wretched Shop 2 times. The first time the killer plays Spirit, second time the killer plays Clown. There can be an actual situation in this game where the Clown performs better than the Spirit because the Clown had 7 pallets total on the map and the Spirit had 14 safe pallets that are unmind gameable even for Spirit, or something like that. I'm saying that is not an unrealistic scenario, and that's as controlled of a study as you can possibly get, because you have the same players, the same skill level, the same map, the same perks, the same killer, obviously other than when you switch, but you have control of all these variables, and the only thing you don't have control over is the map RNG. But in this very controlled experiment, the Clown did better than Spirit, therefore Clown is better than Spirit. Of course that's not true, we know that's not true, but the game makes that a possibility, and I've noticed a lot of these arguments start having this as a subtle basis. Like, you can make all these arguments about which killers are weak, which killers are strong, but really it boils down to which map are you getting? Because every killer is shit on Ormond. Every killer is good on Azeroth if you do the 3-gen strat. Map RNG is extremely important in determining your balance, but how do you balance things when the maps themselves are random? It just gets to this whole thing where it's so inconsistent. How could you possibly balance that? Because you can have the same killer do amazing on one map and then do terribly on the same map due to the variations in the map. I think first, let me just show you what I'm talking about, and then we'll discuss more exactly the problems with all this stuff. But this is definitely one of the biggest problems with the game. So let's take a wonderful stroll through Wretched Shop, for example. So this is an example of, let's see. Let's actually start with the worst Wretched Shop first. So let's start with this one. So here's Wretched Shop. And we're starting in the same spot for both these comparisons. So here we go. Let's go through a tour. So we start off in nothing. There's nothing here, just a bunch of rocks and nothing. No pallets so far. To our left is a TL wall, which is one of the weakest generic structures in the game if it's by itself. Chained together with other things, it's good. But by itself, which it is, they are not very strong at all. And then we've got more nothing. We've got tank tracks to the left, nothing to the right. More tank tracks. One of the weakest pallets in the game. This loop is literally like a lunge distance, so might as well not even exist. And then we've got a hill, which is, again, basically nothing. And then we've got a tree, which is nothing. Then we've got some more junk over here. Some tires, which is nothing. Another TL wall with basically nothing. And then we've got some more trees here with basically nothing. And then halfway across the map, we've encountered our, first actual pallet. And even then, this is just a generic car loop. You can get around it in 10 seconds. So not much. So now let's compare that, just that intro alone, let's compare it to the exact same map with the exact same starting spot with good RNG for survivors, obviously. So we start off immediately, there's a rock loop to our left, which is, we're already hitting the same amount of pallets as the last time in 1 meter. Now, let's keep going here. We have a long wall jungle gym, which was one of the most strongest, nice English, one of the strongest generic structures in the entire game. The pallet is right there. This is one of the most strong generic structures in the entire game. And very, very good. And that is connected to a car loop with another pallet and a generator, which is connected to another car loop, which is, and then I think we have just the hill here, but then to our right, we have another pallet, and then to our left is another long wall jungle gym with another pallet, which is, again, very, very strong. To our right is one of these, I don't know what these loops are called, I guess tire loops, which are also very strong, and there's another one there, and then we've got a crane loop here. in the same distance in that entire half of the map. The last map had basically 1.5 pallets. Here, we've already had 6 pallets, all of which are extremely good. And you can start to see the problem here. How can we possibly have a balanced game where we have this map where there is nothing in the entire half of the map? There is nothing to work with at all. And then we have another map where there is twice the amount of pallets. I recorded the entire map just to make sure there wasn't, an imbalance of things on the other side or anything like that. And no, the good map had 14 pallets. The bad map had 7 pallets. Or no, 8 pallets, I'm sorry. So the bad map had 8 pallets. The good map had 14 pallets. That already alone is ridiculous. You should not have variations so much to where you can have almost twice the amount of pallets on the exact same map. That is the first huge problem. The pallet variation needs to be shrunk a lot. It needs to not be from 8 to 14. It should be from like 10 to 11 or something like that. And that's it. There should not be that much variation. Now, the problem is there is a lot of not understanding what makes a good pallet too. Because you would think on the map with fewer pallets, well, there would be stronger tiles. You would have more long walls and stuff like that. So the pallet value is stronger even if there's less pallets. But that's not even the case. Because, as you can see in the on the bad map, there's just nothing. There's no long wall jungle gyms at all. There's no generic strong tiles. It's just TL walls. Like, there's just nothing at all to work with. So there's no, consolation. There's no pallet weighting or anything like that. Like, the only pallet you get on this side of the map is this pallet, which has literally 0 pallet weight. Pallet weight is basically the strength of the pallet determined by the developers. That's something they talked about a long time ago for map generation. So according to the developers, this one pallet is the only pallet in this entire half of the map. And this is apparently, it has enough strength to warrant that being the only pallet on that entire side of the map. Which, would make sense if there were stronger pallets and stuff like that, but there's not. And immediately here on the stronger side, we have one of the strongest tiles in the game, which is a long wall jungle gym. So it doesn't make any sense. On the map that has twice the amount of pallets, it also has more stronger tiles that have more pallet efficiency. So it just makes double no sense. And this is a really common thing, and it's why I'm so opposed to tournaments, because how could you possibly blame a killer for losing on this variant of the map when, their opposition got the other version of the map? It's ridiculous. They're not even the same map at this point. They're completely different. So the thing is, the devs are very hard set in their idea of having the game have procedural generation and randomness. And that's okay. I think, having just Dust 2 every map would be boring. That's not what I want. Maybe for tournaments, having tournament seeds or something like that would be fine, but that's for tournaments. You can still have RNG in this game, and that's fine, but it needs to be better dispersed and less of it, I think. 8 to 14 pallets is ridiculous. We need to just nix that right there. That's just stupid. You should never be able to have that much variation in the amount of pallets, or the amount of pallets. Even if the pallets on the, lower number are stronger pallets, that's still ridiculous. That should not happen. The other thing that needs to be really addressed is the strength of the pallets is not accurately being weighed. This is a perfect example of that, because if that were true, there would be far less pallets on the map with all the long wall jungle gyms and all that good stuff, because those tiles are very, very strong, and the weaker map had very, very weak tiles and still less pallets. So we need to definitely address the fact that their gauging system for what makes a strong pallet is not accurate in the least. It's extremely inaccurate, or this scenario could never happen. So less RNG in the number of pallets, and better, more accurate weighting for the amount of pallets in the game, and their strength relative to the tile that they're in needs to be addressed like way, way, way more. And I think that would be a lot better for the game's health overall. Like, you can still have random generation. It just needs to be better dispersed. You should not have a dead zone where half the map has absolutely nothing in it. That's just stupid. Because there's going to be 3 gens in that area. And what are the survivors supposed to do in that scenario? And on the flip side, you shouldn't have a killer have, an Orman setup where there's 4 long wall jungle gyms connected to 2 rock loops connected to the shack. Like, that should never happen either. So pallet weighting and the number of pallets needs to be really, really addressed. Because, just a lot of the arguments in this game come down to the fact that we're balancing based off of an inconsistent metric to balance things to even begin with. You can't balance things because there's no consistent thing to balance them based off of. So I think if we had more solid maps, hell, if we had map seeding, we could literally have a testing map that has the same layout that we test every killer in, then we can get the, overall chase time of each killer relative to what they've got. And that would be a much better metric of how a map or how a killer is actually balanced. But as it stands, we can't do that, so we'll never know. And that's why I think tier lists are stupid too, because like you can't determine it. Nurse is the only one you could say is a top because she just ignores all of the shit we're talking about. But yeah, I just had to bring up this example because this is a very common thing. You can have one map with 7 pallets and one map with 14 pallets, and it's the same damn map. And that is the cause for, I think, so many arguments in this community, because we just don't have a good thing to balance things off of. We have no consistent testing grounds, and there's no way to really do that with this much RNG. So, yeah, map RNG, it's fine. You can keep it in the game, but it's got to be more consistent, and it's got to be more spread out, I guess is the better way to say that. So, more consistent, less variation in the number of pallets, and we need to make things more spread out evenly and work on the pallet actual weighting system to determine the strength of a pallet. Because, man, I literally just stopped making my guide to make a video about this and just to rant about it, because this is just the dumbest shit I've ever seen. This should never happen, and it happens like every other game. So that's it, guys. I am still working on the Blight Guide, and I will hopefully continue to work on it. I'm terrible at Patreon. I don't even thank people anymore. I don't even know why there's people subbed to my Patreon. I do literally nothing for it. If you like me, sub to my Patreon and get nothing for it. Thanks, guys. All right, bye.